We have seen some absolutely appalling strategies.
This organisation is setting fire to money on a daily basis.
That's why your strategy needs to be able to flex and adapt.
It's everywhere. Every conference I attend across Europe.
So just as a business strategy shouldn't be put on a shelf and forgotten about, nor should you do that with a marketing plan.
So we are here today to talk to Veronica Hannon, Managing Director of Transform. And we're going to put Ronnie through her paces a little bit today, because in the previous podcasts, you normally get me talking a hell of a lot, but I'm going to step back, or try to, and we're going to speak to Ronnie and pick Ronnie's brain a little bit on the word strategy and what that means to us and businesses. So Ronnie, when we talk about strategy, what does that mean and what do we do with that?
And it's a really good question, because we have seen some absolutely appalling strategies, in inverted commas, come across our desks. And for me, it's really having clarity about what the purpose of the organisation is. So we always start with Simon Sinek's why. So that's sort of core fundamental purpose, why they exist. And then their short, medium and long-term goals for the business, strategy, what they want to achieve, where they see the opportunities arising. But I think also from our perspective, we are a marketing consultancy, and people will often try to limit us into a marketing strategy. And that's a box we always try to break out of, isn't it?
100%, yeah. So we tend to go into organizations and ask some pretty pressing questions, and we've had some eyebrows raised at times in some of what we call a deep dive. And it's exactly as you say, when you go into a board who sometimes are quite guarded, and rightly so, they might not know us incredibly well at that stage. They will get to know us incredibly well, but at that point they don't. And there's that trust barrier to break down, isn't there? And
100%.
And for them to understand and realise that we do genuinely know what we are talking about. And in some cases more than some people on the board, which I won't mention names, but we do go in on that. And one of our first questions is, what is your exit plan?
Yeah, and that exit plan can be personal. So for larger organizations, that might be, a CEO who has a tenure, has a time frame in mind, and they will have certain things that they want to achieve during that period. Or it can be for a scale up or growth business who exit could be either acquiring different organizations. It could be transferring ownership. So we've had one organization that we work very closely with become an employee-owned trust. And that assumes sort of a huge, quite a big shift, quite a lot of internal and brand engagement, quite a lot of education within those. And for other companies, it might be an exit, especially of the senior leadership team, which then means from a marketing perspective, we need to demonstrate that there is more value in the rest of the business aside from just the values that the owners and the founders bring. So we look at those sort of, all of that life cycle of a business, whether they're in scale up, whether they're in growth phase, which might mean new markets, new opportunities, new products, new services being developed. If they're in almost a defend situation, which might be, they're top of the market and they need to protect their market share. So that can lead to different things. And then absolutely the exit, what is that? And that could be acquisition as well. Yeah. Whether they're acquiring different businesses or planning an exit. So I think it's getting that framework of actually what are the real goals and objectives of that business from a business strategy perspective. Because if you then think about it, you have business strategy at the top that sets the frame, sets the picture. Your marketing strategy is in service of that, because that is, how are you going to engage people? Who are you going to engage, and with what are you going to engage them? So that's very audience focused in terms of actually really raising that brand awareness with the right people. And that can be internal and external people as well. It can be stakeholders. So you might be having a look at, your investors potentially as a stakeholder group, or say now you are looking to exit, you might be looking to make yourself attractive to acquirers. That then becomes a core audience, not just the sales side of things. And then from a marketing perspective, we talk about alignment with all the way through the funnel to the sales, the conversion of those people into new business. And I think that alignment piece is where we start, because then we can see what marketing is doing in service of the business strategy and in service of the business development.
Yeah, 100%. And what would you say to an organization if they said, why are we doing that?
That alignment piece, because that's where growth exists.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what you end up doing is creating silos. You have an executive team who has a very closely guarded business strategy, don't tell anybody. You have a marketing team who is there, has got KPIs of increasing brand awareness or building something, but they don't know the purpose of why they're doing it. It's just more. And then you've got the sales team who are just looking at hitting their targets and their KPIs. And if you don't have that alignment, what will tend to happen is if sales miss their target, it's marketing's fault. And if marketing aren't getting the KPIs, it's because they don't know what they're doing from a business strategy perspective. And that creates mistrust. And that actually means that you're not going to grow as effectively. HubSpot, who we know and we use quite effectively with a lot of our clients, said that only 22% of companies say that their sales and their marketing strategies are aligned. But when they are, 208% more revenue is generated.
Which is astronomical.
And that's just alignment. That's just internal communication and engagement and making certain that it's really effective all the way through.
It goes deeper than that as well, though, because if you're not aligned and then your sales team are upset because they're not hitting targets and they're under the cosh and they're getting hammered by sales director, by C-suite to perform more, they then start to become unproductive because an unhappy worker is a bad worker, let's be honest, and if you've got somebody that's not engaged, what is happening? What is that ripple effect through the business that then comes out the other end when you get to the bottom line at the end of the year? How is that impacting that?
But I think also worse than that, if not, well, actually as bad as that, is the fact that they might be bringing on customers that aren't the right type of customer or the right sort. And if you sell something for the wrong reasons, your customer is not going to be happy with what they get at the end, because essentially they are not receiving what they thought they would. And then that leads to a reputational issue, which then comes back around into marketing to be able to manage. And you create a sort of a reverse of a productive cycle where you're just managing customer complaints, customer loyalty, customer churn. So then your strategy has to shift to, oh, heck, we have to retain customers. That stops you doing new market growth because you're trying to protect and defend what you've got already. And I think that then means everybody's working hard for no additional gain.
Yeah. And then you've got a client retention problem. You then create an employee retention problem. Recruiting is hard. It's expensive. It's time consuming. And then to get people up to speed when you do bring new people in, you're looking at a 3 to 6 month period before they become seriously effective, unless you get a golden goose and everything's wonderful in the world. Yeah.
And that's why, we always say everything that we do starts with strategy, because if you don't get that, we can create a fantastic campaign. We can help market something, we can help get something out there, but if it's not actually going to be long-term productive, you're going to be motoring pretty hard and spending quite a lot of cash for limited return, because it's not compounded growth. It's just sort of, let's do this because this is cool. And I think that to me is something that always sets my alarm bells ringing when people say, well, we really want to do something that's out there and that's creative and that's going to make a mark, not a question. And a few people think it's not necessarily always showing the passion, but our questioning will be, but why? Why is that important? Give us the reason, give us the objective, give us the goal that you're trying to achieve. And then creativity is fun, but it has to be in service of purpose.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. We've seen cases like that in the past where we're introduced to incumbent agencies of clients or prospects, and we're given a strategy stroke marketing plan, and I say that very loosely. There's one at the top of my mind, actually. So we started working with an organization about a year and a half ago, launching into the market with a brand new product in the EV world. This thing is a game changer, absolutely incredible. And the big players, blue chips, are all over it already, and even offering to acquire before it's properly launched. I think there's a few live examples of this product in the marketplace at the moment, but it needs to be hundreds of them. And when I spoke with their marketing agency, definitely not a consultancy, I asked to see the deck. What are you doing? Can you show me the strategy? And what we received was a 150-page PowerPoint presentation of just stuff to do, and there was no reason or rhyme, there was no alignment there, and it was just stuff, and that's great. Some of that will land, maybe some of it, i.e. 90% of it, absolutely won't, and this organization is setting fire to money on a daily basis, just to throw things out there for the sake of it. And the founder of the organization, I jumped on a meeting with him, lovely guy, lovely people, and I explained what we do, how we do it, and how we might do things slightly differently. And at the end of the call, he said, we're just aspiring to be you, basically. If we can get to where you are and who you are, that's what we want to be. Can you train us? And unfortunately, we don't train competitors, but there are competitors and there are not competitors in all markets and fields, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think also when we were talking about that alignment, one of the things that we've seen, and an example of another company that we did a deep dive session, as you say, that's what we call them, with 4 of the founders of the organisation, and we uncovered during that time, and I spoke about sort of the personal aspirations of founders, that actually they hadn't really given voice to their own personal long-term ambitions. And some of them were short-term ambitions.
3 years.
It's 3 years, build the business, exit. And some were longer.
10 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you're automatically sitting there with a very, very different set of objectives that are influencing the business strategy. And unless you give space for those to be aired, and I think were we the fourth session like that they apparently had. But yeah, their response, you say, yeah.
So at the end of the 4th session, they said, out of all of these that we've ever done, this is the only one that has been any use, and they are now an active working client with us, doing incredible things. I mean, their market and their client base is blue chip.
Big time.
Big blue chip.
Yeah.
An incredibly interesting organisation. So they are with C-suite all the time, of organisations much larger than theirs and ours. But it's incredibly interesting to see what can come out of one of those sessions, and what that then gives them to go away and work with alongside our help, as and where it's needed. But do you want to just explain briefly what a deep dive is and what we go through within a deep dive? Because we say deep dive, and we understand it like the back of our hands, but not everybody does. Everybody's been through one.
No, absolutely. So yes, a deep dive session for us is getting the senior leaders in the business, that can be C-suite, those can be owner founders, together, preferably face-to-face in a room. We have done them remotely with teams in Mexico, in the UK, with teams in Brazil, all over the world.
Europe.
But there's nothing like actually spending proper time face-to-face and giving space to these types of conversations. And we will use a model that's called a SOSTAC system, which is a horrible acronym, but sort of stands for, analysing the situation as it is, and then looking at the why of the organisation, the how they do things differently, the what they do. So being able to get that proposition and that clarity of messaging coming through. We also do something that I always find, and every company that we show it to finds it incredibly valuable, which is a competitor overview. And I'm always quite surprised in a way how relatively few organizations do this, and do it regularly, because the competitive landscape shifts and changes, or do it well. And those are competitors that you might know, but there are also competitors for awareness. So these might be people who are typing. So if you think, most people would tend to go to Google initially, unless they are getting a referral. They will go to Google to be able to do a scan. They're increasingly going to AI to be able to do exactly the same thing. And they will then look at who comes up. To their mind, those are competitors. So as an organization, we might say that marketing agency isn't a competitor of ours, but if people are finding them when they're searching for organizations who do something similar to us, they are, because they are competing for that attention. So that competitor analysis, which really looks in depth at their proposition, at their performance, and what they bring and how they describe their offer, even to the extent of, I think with one organization we were doing a brand strategy with, which is obviously another segment of strategy. You have brand strategy, you have overall marketing strategy, you've got all sorts of different elements that come through. But they were looking at a brand strategy, and some of that is about the look and the feel of the organization, the visual brand identity, and how that is reflected in a competitive landscape. And you can get some interesting insights from those. And then we really get into the depths of it. So we're looking at what people are wanting to achieve. So what is the real strategy? What are those short, medium and long-term goals? And then we go into, okay, what are the objectives? So set the objectives. If you have objectives, make certain that they're smart objectives, they're measurable. And if that data can be collated and aligned all the way through from business strategy through to sales conversion, that makes it all the more powerful. So just as a business strategy shouldn't be put on a shelf and forgotten about, nor should you do that with a marketing plan. It needs to be continuously honed and refined and iterate as you go through, test and learn. That's the best approach for things. Definitely.
I was out in Munich with a client back in November 24 at the Semicon Europa conference that I was very privileged to be invited to by the president. And I was sat with a Chinese company and their marketing director talking about exactly that. And they said they pivot so regularly that she's working on the marketing strategy on a weekly basis on a Sunday. And their weekly meeting is 5 p.m. on a Sunday night. And if that last week and month's tactics haven't delivered, that strategy can be changed literally overnight, and that has to be communicated to 800 employees, and everybody has to align, and then they'll go again for that week, fortnight, month, and then they'll stop, assess, make a judgment, and if it's working, they'll keep going. If it's not, they'll pivot again. I mean, I don't think the UK companies in particular are as aggressive as that.
Yeah, I mean, you say that, but I think because everything is so uncertain out there at the moment, and because we don't know, we've been through so many big events which have pulled the rug from underneath us. A German company, a big pneumatic engineering, the world's largest company that we worked for, had 3 strategies running at the same time, with that ability to go from strategy A to strategy B to strategy C in response to market conditions. And that was very, very clearly communicated. And there would be certain trigger points and certain things that would precipitate the change of being able to say, okay, yeah, we're moving from strategy A to strategy C because we need to respond to X market condition that's happening. So I think a lot of organizations are taking that approach now, being able to say we've got to be adaptable. We've got to be agile out in the market, because you never know. I mean, if we think to 18 months ago, few people were really talking about AI in terms of general business practice, and now every second business that's launching is an AI business.
It's everywhere. Every conference I attend across Europe at the moment is absolutely top subject AI.
Yeah.
And how can you use AI better within your organization? And the amount of people organizations that are releasing new AI technology to help with marketing, to help with lead generation, to help with whatever it may be, is astronomical at the moment. It's everywhere. My inbox personally is filled with it. LinkedIn DMs, emails, you cannot hide from it.
One of our clients, Daniel Snell from Arrival, has a brilliant catchphrase, which I really love, where he says, yes, but hang on a minute. AI is not a strategy. AI is a tool to be able to deliver your strategy more effectively. It is not a strategy in its own right. And I often use that when talking to businesses, going, okay, just because it's there and it exists doesn't mean that it is something that you absolutely need to have an AI generated part of your business or an AI revenue. You've got to look at it in a different way and say, how can it best be deployed to help us, whether that's from an efficiency perspective, a productivity perspective, a technology perspective, or a service or product that you offer.
Let's not go too far down the AI route today, because we're going to end up in an AI podcast, and that will come at a later date. But let's move on slightly. Let's talk about business strategy. We've mentioned this a few times, and we've touched on why we look at business strategy to align with sales, marketing, so on and so forth. But why do we, as an organization, when we go into our clients' offices or they come here, why do we talk about and ask about business strategy first and up front?
Because otherwise, marketing is just stuff. And it's just stuff that you do. And it's stuff that always needs to be done. And you can never do enough of it. And then you can never measure the effectiveness of it. And then you never know whether that has actually worked or that has been a success out in the marketplace. And I think while you might be able to get a whole ton of data and metrics about about marketing effectiveness, unless you are actually tracking the really big goals that you're heading towards, and unless marketing is supporting those really big goals, you never know whether it is done. So I will always say to an organization, okay, what are your key priorities? If we can help you meet those key priorities, is what we're doing going to be a success in your eyes? And of course it will be, because if we are supporting them in new market penetration, if we're supporting them in revenue growth, if we're supporting them on attracting potential acquirers to them, if you're all of those different things, that's what gets us all out of bed. That's what we think of as a success. So when people say, what are the most successful things you've been involved in? We can look back at it and can go, well, it was when that company went from startup to selling for a 7-figure sum in 12 months to the day. When one of our organizations went from 20 people to 65 in a period of
2 years.
Of 2 years. When we can see that market growth, that's what we reflect back as us playing our part in helping them to achieve that. And I think that's really important when there is that visibility and that alignment. And that is also why we're very keen. And when you joined, it was like the missing piece of the puzzle in Transform, because you came with that sort of business development, sales side to you, where you were also responsible for sales and marketing as your job. You connected that marketing piece to the conversion, to the business development. And that really helped us and has helped so many clients that we've been involved with link those two together. And I mean, there have been some interesting instances where we've been involved in sales conversations with organizations.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, I've seen in previous years, when being an employee and working for organizations, how misaligned those areas can be and the damage that can do within an organization. And then in the 6 years that we have been working together now, we see it all the time. And some of these organizations are hundreds of millions of turnover. I've got one at the forefront of my mind, and obviously we won't mention any names, but it was an acquisition by a large American organization of 6 companies in the UK. And we were tasked to help to bring that together. How do we bring this piece together to make sure it aligns, they communicate together? Some of the organizations sold the same thing, but one of them was procuring it from Germany when they could have procured it 30 miles down the road from their sister company. There was another situation, same organization, where they had an e-commerce platform. And in a back of the fag packet situation, you and I managed to, I think it was 10 minutes, decipher that e-commerce platform was losing them around 50 to 80,000 a year. Per year, and this had been running for 5 years, and the decision was made by the CEO in that deep dive within 10 minutes to switch it off immediately. And they were selling things on the e-commerce platform for less or more than what they were selling them directly with salespeople. So the mistrust that could create, but also the lack of communication, because if they had 50 people a year going to buy one of those products, that's 50 people they're not talking to. And they're buying it for less than what the salespeople are selling it in showrooms or whatever it was. They're selling it for less on the e-commerce than what they would do directly, or vice versa, more. So people would get there and go, well, that's more expensive there, so I can just speak to John or Mary or Joseph, whoever the salesperson is, and buy it directly for £500 less. And that's a really bad message out in the marketplace.
And I think, when we were talking about misalignment costing businesses money, that from a reputational perspective is absolutely appalling, because automatically there is no alignment, there is no trust that is being generated, and your reputation gets called into question. Do you actually... Are you trying to pull the wool over my eyes? Are you trying to missell me something? And customers then begin to feel like a number, and it's all just about getting the sales through. On a reverse side of things, the engineering company, the big German engineering company, we were doing a big campaign for them in the UK, and they took a totally different approach, where we had identified a market segment that they wanted to go after in the UK. We'd come up with all of the different messaging. We'd done our research in terms of the audience that they wanted to attract. We'd done the insights into that market. We'd prepared very carefully crafted, honed, refined, lovely marketing messaging. But before it even went out to market, and before the first campaign launched, I did a sales engagement piece, which was going into all of their sales teams and talking to them about how they could communicate it, what they could say, how they could show an understanding of that audience and understand the challenges that audience faced, and therefore present their solution as solving those challenges, rather than this is just a superb widget that does X, Y, and Z. So it's starting to get that audience insight. And there was another study that was done this time. It was Forrester, which is a big research organization. I'm going to refer to my notes because, not like you, I can't keep facts and figures in my head that much. But it says that 74% of B2B buyers choose the sales rep that is first to add value and insight to that customer when they're in front of them. And that, to me, speaks all about alignment, because if that sales rep has got the insight that's been given to them, that's been honed and refined and crafted by their marketing teams, they can then give voice to it, and they can be that consultative sale rather than the hard-nosed let's get a deal salesman. And that's a very different type of relationship.
I completely agree. And where we see, I think that the best versions of this is where that sales and marketing team within said organization are completely aligned. And I think the biggest mistake I see is that an organization will put the sales team at one end of an office or one end of a country and a marketing team at the other end of a country, and they don't talk. And then sales blame marketing blame sales, and it's just a nasty vicious circle where nothing ever gets done, unfortunately. And there are, as many people will know, about 12 touch points to a sale. So a buyer should be around 70 to 80% sure that they're going to buy from you before they've even inquired. So if it's a cold inquiry coming through, they've already received some marketing collateral, they've received a brochure, they've received some information, they've read a white paper, they've looked at a podcast, they've blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I won't go on. And when they get to said sales rep or sales director, whoever's fronting the floor with that, they're ready to buy pretty much. And it's just that last piece of the puzzle. People buy from people. And if you don't like somebody, you will not buy from them. I'm absolutely ruthless in this. And I can look at something for £100 or £150. But if I don't like the person selling it to me at £100, I will go and buy it for £150. I had this recently with a very large retailer, and I won't mention the name. And I'd ordered something online. No, I'd rang them. So I first called them to say, is this compatible? It was a tech piece. Is this compatible with the piece of technology that I want to apply it to? Yes, it is. And I triple checked this on the phone with a guy. 100% that will work. That's what you need. I went online. I ordered it from said organization. I drove there 30 minutes. Walked in. It was already paid for online. Walked in. Here's my collection ID, can I pick up said item? And I said, just want to check with you one last time, this is compatible with a piece of tech that I want to pair this up with. And the guy went, absolutely not.
Oh, no.
And all of a sudden I go, hang on a minute. What do you mean absolutely not? No, that is not what you need. That won't work. We don't stock what you need. This is what you do need. Showed me on a phone, and you need to go here to buy it. And then the response was, and it's going to take 5 days to refund your money. And I was infuriated, absolutely infuriated for the waste of time. My money's not in my bank account, and I've got to spend that money again and wait for my money to come back. And I did go and buy it again, but it left a really sour taste with that company that I probably won't go back for much more in the future. And I'm lying, because 6 months later, I went back.
No, Dan.
And it was even worse an experience. Okay. So I walked into the same company. It was literally 3 weeks ago. And I bought myself a new toy. I've bought a future classic car, and I wanted to get a new stereo upgrade. I wanted a touch screen and sat nav, because this car doesn't have all of that. And I said, do you sell car stereos? Yeah, we do. Yeah. I said, brilliant. I want to talk to you about purchasing a car stereo. I would have spent £400 or £500. And the guy looking at me said, oh, well, I've just started my lunch break. I went, that's great, but you're on the shop floor and I'm talking to you. I want to spend £400 or £500. Do you do the installation? Yeah, can you come back in an hour?
No.
And I went, absolutely not. And walked out, and that was it. And now I will not take my money to that place, and I will go somewhere else.
And I think that is where, going back and rounding it off, that is where misalignment costs. Yeah. Because it's reputation, it's damage, and you've been very good at not naming them, but you could.
I'll give you a clue. They've got some incredible. So this year, and they've been all over LinkedIn with it. They've whoever's working alongside them on their marketing plan, strategy, and delivery of their videos in particular, it's getting massive traction. Working or utilizing the younger people within their organization, and they are the people that are on camera there, and it's fun. It's a bit
irreverent, and probably beyond that
at times. And the videos are planned to look like it's not planned, and it's completely ad hoc, and they've just walked in and caught somebody unaware. And you watch that, you go, okay, yeah, they're really cool. They're doing really good stuff. But when you go in to actually inquire or buy something, it's not
the experience.
Aligned. It's not matching. And a very good friend of mine said exactly the same thing about them. He said, I refuse to shop there anymore.
So we had that with a client that their goals and objectives were fast growth. And everything was about lead generation. It's like, we just need to get the phones to ring. We need to get the phones to ring. We need to get the phones to ring. Website inquiries.
You're talking about.
Website inquiries coming through, and everything. Yet the customer experience is the first thing you do. You pick up the phone to talk to the technical experts. And what happened, Dan?
I rang them 3 times while sat with the board, and nobody picked the phone up.
Yeah. Oh, and that was after having to press 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 about 5 times to get through to the sales team. So that to me is where you go, actually, from a strategic perspective, if it's all about revenue growth, get your system aligned right from the start to the end, because you cannot afford to lose a lead. And that bad reputation will just mean they'll never call you back. And however many activation campaigns or LinkedIn posts or marketing campaigns that you put out, the sour taste of a poor experience will outweigh all of those. So get it aligned at the beginning so your strategy is visible the whole way through that customer journey. Then everything will work and work beautifully. That's our approach.
The big problem with that is that bad news spreads a lot quicker than good news, unfortunately. And as human beings, we are all naturally wired to want to rant and rave or have a moan about something that isn't working or isn't good or wasn't a good experience. I think the ratio is 7-1, isn't it, from a review platform perspective?
At least.
And I'm guilty of this. I've
keyboard warrior.
I've written some TripAdvisor reviews before of terrible, genuine terrible experiences, and I go, actually, no, people need to be aware of that, because that is a waste of my money, and I don't want them to waste their money. And we are all very quick to write that rather than the good stuff. So, I think that is one key takeaway from this podcast is that bad news spreads like wildfire.
So absolutely make certain everything is in service to that and to your goals and objectives. And I think then you can avoid all of those different things.
I'm going to circle us back slightly and talk about the data side of things, because many moons ago, Henry J. Ford said that 50% of his marketing works, 50% of it doesn't. But he doesn't know which is which. And I think the world has changed so much nowadays and even years ago, we used to talk from a content perspective of, a thought leadership piece going out that was printed and it was a brochure and people might collect it from an event stand, or they may have been sent it in the post. Nobody knows what they're doing with that. Now we digitalize that. We also make it a physical copy. We can look at how many people download it. We can look at how many people interact with it on websites by inserting pixels or whatever it may be. And the world has changed in such a way that we can genuinely measure 80-90% of what we're doing and the effects of that. So how key is data, and how should organizations use data within their organization?
Data is the foundation of everything. But you can get pockets of data that sit in their own little silos. And the key aspect of it is being able to align it back up, ladder it back up, if you like, through the organization. So, for example, a key data point might be the number of new business wins that you get at a certain level in an organization. If you ladder that then back up, you can be able to say, how many of those 12 touch points will marketing need to be able to affect to be able to get that one sense of that one conversion at the bottom. From a business perspective, you'll then have the top line revenue, and the business strategy perspective, top line revenue target that's there. And if you can get that line of sight that goes all the way through, it stops looking at just vanity stats. And we talk about that as well quite a lot. So I think in your podcast on websites, you looked at that the organic traffic that a website gains is only applicable if it is actually the right audience who is coming to the right page on the website, sticking around for the certain amount of time, viewing other pages, and then converting into it. So it is a case of trying to weed out some of those great stats that every organization, we increase traffic to our website by 200%. Fantastic. But if they're looking for your favorite analogy, if they're looking for gym shorts and you sell widgets, it's not the right people that are coming to your website. So that aspect of data is important, but it needs to be totally aligned with actually the goals that is in service of. And when you get that then means that the leadership team should have clarity and a line of sight all of the way through their organization. That stops the blame game going on between marketing and sales, and that stops people drifting off course to do something fun, exciting, new and different because that's what so-and-so is doing or that's what such and such recommended. So it becomes very, very sort of aligned. The interesting thing, and I've got words from a very close mentor and friend of ours, which is if individuals in the organization know then how their job supports that business strategy, that's engagement. And that's when you get it all the way through down to an individual doing a certain task.
Absolutely. And utilising that data in the correct way. I think so with the multi-billion pound organisations that we work with, we're pretty much told at the beginning of the year what they have to spend and what spend is going where, what, why. But what we often see is 3, 6, sometimes 9 months into that programme, we've got enough data to be able to go back to say, this is really working. We're 50, 60, 70, 80% of the way of the spend on that. Let's just take an example. So if it was a PPC and LinkedIn, paid ad spend, what it gives you or gives the marketing team is the ability to go to the board who don't have sight of this all the time. They're busy in other directions, but to go to them and say, we've spent 100,000, but we've got 500,000 back. Why would you not then throw another 100,000 pounds at that to get another 500,000 back? Yeah. If somebody walked into our office today and said, give me a tenner and I'll give you 100 quid, what would you say? The answer is yes. So I think it's being able to prove, that proof point to be able to say,
and that's market demand.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's responding to market demand.
Exactly that.
And if this is where back to Henry J. Ford, if 50% of your marketing is generating 150% of your sales, you do more of that. And that is responding. So, and that's why your strategy needs to be able to flex and adapt for it. So, we see that quite a lot with one organization that we work with where we're testing different markets. So we're looking at sector-specific campaigns to be able to identify actually where they are best placed to go after next from a account-based marketing perspective. Where do they really need to focus on? So you sort of research the landscape, test the waters, see where the demand is, and then you scale up to be able to meet that demand. And that's really important, which is why our SOSTAC model is always a circle. Because when you get the control and when you get the data and you get the measurements, that's going to affect your situation analysis. That's going to affect what you're going to be doing in terms of your strategy or the tactics that you need to deploy. So it's constantly evolving and constantly feeding back. So our marketing plans flex and adapt all of the time, don't they?
Oh gosh, yeah. And they're measured monthly, quarterly. Yeah. My favourite part is the end of year when we get to sit with the board and say, right, here it is in black and white. This is what we've done. This is what's worked. And sometimes we have to put our hand in the air and go, that didn't work. That is not going to be a part of the strategy next year, or we've already switched it off for you and we've pivoted and done this instead. And that I think is the most exciting part when you can go proof in the pudding. Your success is our success.
Exactly.
Because we are not successful if our clients aren't successful. We wouldn't exist if we weren't successful for our clients being successful. And that's what I think really gets me out of bed in the morning is being able to go, we've done it right. We've done it amazingly. You won an award. We've won an award. You've grown. We've grown. Yeah,
100%, and that's where we will always say it's about that partnership, and if that trust can be established at those first deep dive sessions with the senior leadership team and with them really understanding the purpose behind the questions that we put together, then it's a joint celebration and it becomes that partnership, and that's what fuels me.
So Ronnie, key takeaways, putting you through your paces. So from what we've discussed today, what are the 3 things that organisations could consider when they're looking at their strategy for this year, next year? We use the word strategy quite lightly because that, as we've discussed, means many different strategies that form one.
Yeah, absolutely. And that for me is the number one takeaway, is don't think of strategies as being independent from each other. So a business strategy, a marketing strategy, a brand strategy, a sales strategy, they all need to be informed by each other, and it needs to start with business strategy first. That also means that you need to choose to work with people that you are comfortable sharing that information with, and that there is the trust there that that information will be used in the right way. And that's really important. And that's something that we guard very, very closely, our clients' confidentiality. And we know more than a lot of their teams know about what the business is doing and where their business is going in the near future. So that's the first key takeaway. The second of all is make certain that you evolve and adapt as things go on. So test and learn all of the time. And that means having a really collaborative approach. So getting your senior leadership team in the same room with all of the key partners, and your sales and your marketing functions. Because if you're all tackling something together, many hands light work and all of that, and if you're all aligned, you're going to get far greater engagement and you're going to get far better results. So that is another one. And the third takeaway is make certain everything you do serves the purpose of your strategy and your goals, and question yourself. Question all of the time. Is that important? What's that in service of? Is it going to give us something that we haven't had before? How are we going to measure it? How are we going to show that it's been successful?
Brilliant. I'd like to thank you for your time today and our conversation, and for taking the bulk of this one. It saves you guys having to listen to me anymore. But equally, if you do have any questions with regards to your own marketing strategy, your business strategy, your sales strategy, your strategy as a whole, we would love to talk to you. Please reach out. We're happy to give advice for free. Equally happy to come and see you. Thank you ever so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. We promise it's all pretty good. At least most of the time. Well, some of the time. You know what, just do it for pity's sake, please.